Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We face in this world trials and tribulations. We face difficulties and obstacles that we are constantly going through, that we constantly have placed before us, that are always in our path. We learn from these situations, but there is a danger whenever we are in the midst of a situation that is difficult for us. And the danger is that we want to push the resolution of this situation forward. We want things to happen in our time. We are at a place where we try to force resolutions when in fact what's required of us when we're in the midst of difficulties is patience. Patience is said to be the umbrella of Allah's throne, the umbrella of God's throne. Well, patience has to be one of our qualities, and it has to come into play whenever we are in a situation that is unresolved. Unresolved situations lead to anxiety, lead to stress, and lead to our attempts to force situations to go into another way, to force situations to come about as our imagination thinks they should be. This causes us additional anxiety and additional stress, and can cause us to lose faith. So, whenever we are in a situation that needs resolution, we must be in a state of patience. And that's how you learn patience. You learn patience when you're under pressure. You learn patience when you're in times of difficulty. You learn patience during these situations. And as you know, patience is one of God's qualities. So whenever we are given difficult situations, think of it as an opportunity to learn more in depth about one of God's qualities, of how to integrate into one of God's qualities. The lack of patience in us leads to qualities that are contradictory to the straight path, that are contradictory to Allah's way. If you don't have patience, you enter into impatience, you enter into hastiness, you can enter into anger, you can enter into all of these qualities that have nothing to do with reality, that have to do with illusion. So unless whatever situation we're in, we find our way into Allah's qualities, the opposite will happen to us. If we don't find our way into Allah's qualities, we will find our way into the qualities of illusion, the qualities of Satan. So we have to be very conscious of the fact that we have to stay within some quality of Allah to maintain our status as a believer, as a true believer. Otherwise, we will fall from that status and begin to lose our faith. Now, we've all been through these situations, and we have all been through situations that we thought at the time were incredibly critical, and then somehow they got resolved. Now, when they get resolved, you need to change qualities. The quality you need to go into when resolution comes is gratitude. And if we don't understand gratitude, then we don't understand what's been done for us. We don't understand that Allah has taken our situation and resolved it for us. And all of a sudden, we're in a place where things are easier for us, where things have reached a place where we're without anxiety, where we notice that our faith becomes stronger because things are going the way we think they should. But when that happens, you can't become complacent. You have to increase your attachment to Allah's qualities. And the major quality that you have to increase at that time is gratitude. So, two qualities that we are constantly going in between, in addition to the others, are patience and gratitude. Difficulty, patience, resolution, gratitude. Difficulty, patience, resolution, gratitude. And while we're in the midst of patience and gratitude, we shouldn't lose our attachment to the other qualities. Mercy and compassion and justice should still remain within us. They should always remain within us. You know, it is said that you can tell the character of a person when they are in difficult times. How do they react when times are difficult for them? Do they become irritable? Do they become angry? Do they become mean? Or are they able to keep their equilibrium? Are they able to remain in a state of faith with the strong determination and certitude that Allah will resolve all problems, that Allah will resolve all situations, that there is nothing beyond the grasp and beyond the ability of Allah to find a resolution for. Now, we know that we run into situations where we do everything we can and then we hit a brick wall. It's like we can't seem to be able to do anything else. But it's in these moments that we get signs and proofs from Allah that that which we can't resolve can be resolved when we surrender to His strength, when we surrender to His power. We are limited. He is not limited. We can only do so much. He can do anything. We can be diminished. Our resources can be diminished. His resources are such that no matter what you take from Him or what He gives to you, it in no way diminishes Him. His fullness never leaves Him. His abilities to alter situations never leaves Him. His ability to move things within this world never leaves Him. And what we call miracles are to Him ordinary. He can control the elements. We can't control the elements. He can control fate. We can't control it. But He has a grasp on all things. He is the great molder, Molder. He brings things into being. He says, and it is. His will is immediate. Our will requires patience, and our will is subject to his will. And if we become advanced, we learn that to surrender our will to his will allows things to go on in a perfected manner. Allah knows what is best for us. We don't always know what is best for us. As we go through our life, we have various opinions and we have various ideas as to what is correct and what is incorrect. Often, these ideas are very warped, and without outside interference and without outside guidance, we go on crooked paths thinking that these paths are appropriate and are somehow positive for us. The culture in society has a way of influencing what it is that we do and how we do things. And the culture in society changes constantly. It's something like when we were young, there was a time when we listened to music. And the music that we listened to would constantly be changing. A hit record would stay in prominence for about 3, 5, 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, it disappeared and other records replaced it. There was no steady continuity. The style may last for a while, but then even the styles change. You can get caught up into almost anything, and everything becomes incredibly important if you give it focus. I was listening to some people discussing what was important in their lives, and there was this one young man who was very wealthy, and he said he spent most of his time discussing with his tailor the size of the lapels on his jackets. Well, that can be very important to you if you're in a group that's constantly focusing on fashion. And fashion can become the most important thing in your life. And if you can't stay abreast of fashion, this can bring about great anxiety in your being. How can I go out in public if I don't look right? How can I go out in public if I don't have a new outfit? How can I go out in public if they've seen me this way already? Well, what's happened is people have become overwhelmed by fashion and overwhelmed by their appearance and overwhelmed by themselves and how they clothe themselves and how they take care of themselves. One of the things that we have to do is we have to reduce the number of things that we're involved with. We have to reduce the number of different scenarios that we play in. For instance, you'll notice I'm wearing a striped shirt today. Well, for the last few weeks, maybe a couple of months, I've been wearing white shirts to every one of these meetings. And then somebody told me, you should change your shirt once in a while. And I do. They were always clean shirts. They were just white. And so now I've become conscious of not wearing the same white shirt all the time. So, and that's for the purpose of the videos, looking a little bit different, one from the other. The words are different, but the picture is very much the same. We need to become comfortable being involved in less and less things. We have to concentrate on what's important in our life. And we have to give up things like being flamboyant. We have to give up things like being socially active. We have to give up things that interfere with our focus and our relationship with Allah. And unless we give these things up, those things will become predominant in our consciousness and will take the place of our relationship with Allah. Addiction is one of the things that can replace our relationship with Allah. And addiction comes in many, many different forms. Habits can replace our relationship with Allah. And habits come in many, many different forms. Addictions can be by way of chemical addictions or by way of other kinds of addictions, mental addictions that aren't necessarily chemical. But for example, if you have an addictive personality, and if you're a drunk, for instance, and you consume a lot of alcohol, you are going to limit your social circle to people who consume alcohol. And people who don't consume alcohol, you're going to push yourself away from because they, one, may not approve of what you're doing, or two, they won't do it with you, and you need to do this. So that need through addiction causes you to sustain, maintain, and create a certain social circle and a certain lifestyle so that you can maintain that addiction. And whereas it would be better for you if you could bring people outside of that circle into your circle to alter your state or to help you alter your state, you actively don't allow that to happen because of your insistence on keeping that state going. To be free of outside influences and to be free of illusory causes is another objective that we have to begin to consider. If we are busy promoting certain causes that have to do with things other than our relationship with Allah, we will find that we are being pushed away from the circles that promote our relationship with Allah. So we have to figure out who and what our circle is. Now, we have a communication going on here. We have a circle going on here. We have a certain focus going on here. And that focus is to constantly emphasize, re-emphasize that the most important thing in our life is our relationship with God. And if we don't take that relationship seriously, if we don't take that relationship and put it at the forefront of our consciousness, what's going to happen is other things will enter into our consciousness, and they will become very important to us, to the point where they are more important than anything else we do. And they create a torpor in our being. For instance, alcohol creates an alcoholic torpor. Marijuana creates a marijuana torpor. All of these drugs create a certain torpor. You become clouded in your consciousness. You become clouded in the way you perceive things. And any mental exercise, any group that you join, creates a point of view. And while you're in that group, you begin to develop attitudes that come from that group, and those attitudes create certain responses within you. For instance, religions tend to be exclusive in their nature, and they tend to tell you that this group that you belong to, this religion that you belong to, is the one and only way that you can move forward in your relationship with God. This can lead to many different kinds of problems in the world, and it does. It can lead to religious wars. It can lead to religious arrogance. It can lead to the belief that because I belong to this group, I've been saved. And so what you've done is you've externalized an internal process. You've externalized what goes on inside of yourself and made reality something that's outside of yourself. Because I belong to this group, I am now somehow different, and I am now somehow changed. There is a hadith that I think puts this into great perspective. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said to his daughter Fatima, and at the day of Qiyamah, on the day of the resurrection, you will not be asked who your father was. You will be looked at as to your own deeds. And so it's not going to be about what group we're in. It's not going to be about the name of the group that we belong to. It's going to be about what is the state of our heart. And we need to protect the state of our heart. And we have learned that there are certain things that harm the state of our heart. There are certain things that create veils between ourself and our Lord that the world, in many circumstances, considers appropriate. Yet in reality, they are not appropriate. We can belong to groups that separate us from other men and women, that separate us from being part of overall humanity. We segregate ourselves into small groups and look for a way to promote this small group. It happens with nationalities, it happens with religions, it happens with races, it happens in every way that you can imagine. People separate themselves. But if we truly believe that Allah created everyone, and Allah created all of us, and Allah exists within every heart, don't we understand that there is a commonality among all men? And shouldn't we be looking at this commonality as opposed to the differences? One of the things that we have to remove from ourselves are differences. We have to be able to look at all of humanity as our brothers and sisters without exception. We have to be able to look at all of humanity as being created by God, the ones who love us and the ones who don't love us. They've all been created by God. And if we limit ourselves to just loving the ones who love us, then we have limited our acceptance of God's creation. We have limited our acceptance of what God has put into being. And somehow we need to be able to go to that transcendent place of all inclusivity, of unconditional love that Allah has for His creation. Now, religions will begin to tell you that Allah only loves the ones in certain religions, that other religions are somehow precluded from His love and from His guidance. And what we need to understand that Allah guides everyone. The ones who choose to be guided are guided. The ones who don't choose to be guided aren't guided. The ones who make up their own rules aren't guided. But of course, the ones who make up their own rules will tell you that the rules that they make up are God's rules. And they have taken rules that they made up and made them the most important things in their world. Bawa used to say to us, you can't reach God by either growing or shaving your hair. Pretty simple. External things aren't going to make you guided correctly. I know a sheikh in Turkey who's since passed, who was visited by Cat Stevens, who became Yusuf Islam. And when Yusuf Islam came to see him, he was wearing robes. And the sheikh said to him, why are you dressed like someone in the desert while you're in the middle of the metropolis of Istanbul? And the answer for that was really quite simply that he somehow thought that these clothes helped him in a certain way. And clothes don't help you. Clothes don't make you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be modest. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be clean. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't look appropriate for the situations that you're in. But clothes isn't going to make you a believer. The length of the tail on your turban isn't going to make you a believer. The fact that you wear a turban isn't going to make you a believer. The fact that you wear a jibba as opposed to trousers isn't going to make you a believer. What's going to make you a believer is the state of your heart, and everything else that you focus on other than the state of your heart is a distraction from the truth of the reality of your connection to Allah. So we have to focus on that connection, and that connection has to become the core of our intention. Our intention shouldn't be fitting in to the group. Our intention should be that our focus is on creating a relationship with God, creating a direct correspondence with God from within us. And that happens through the heart. So we have to focus more on our internal existence than our external existence. And we constantly have to make sure that we are somehow integrated as we walk in this external existence with some of God's qualities. This is one of the keys. As long as we can stay within the protection of God's qualities, we can stay close to Him. So, whatever we do, there has to be justice in what we do. Whatever we do, there has to be mercy in what we do. Whatever we do, there has to be compassion in what we do. And when we have trouble, we have to become patient. And when things are going smoothly, we have to be grateful. But we always have to be somehow involved in God's qualities. And we can't lose focus of that. That is the great protection that we can wear. It's sort of like a cloak that stops the hypnotisms and the magnetisms and the energies of the illusory world from penetrating us. If you can wear a cloak of God's qualities, then the qualities that don't belong to Him are going to have trouble penetrating you and causing you to enter into a torpor of illusion, that cause you to enter into a torpor of doubt, that cause you to enter into a torpor of non-belief. You know, man is expected to believe in God based on faith. And if we are fortunate, we have proofs that God exists, and these proofs come into our lives. Now, if you're not cognizant of these proofs, they can come and come and come at you, but you don't see them because you give credence to other circumstances as the reason for things happening. So when things happen for you that make your life easier, you think that you yourself somehow did it. But in truth, Allah made things easier for you. Allah smoothed the road for you. Allah brought about results that make your life more comfortable and more stress-free and less anxiety-ridden. The way that kind of thinking goes on is by maintaining gratitude, patience, and God's qualities within your being, so that whatever happens, God is given the praise and the glory and the credit for what goes on. There was a dervish walking through a bazaar, and one of the vendors was screaming, trying to sell his watermelons. And he was screaming, "The sweetest there is, the sweetest there is, the sweetest there is." The dervish fainted because to him, people were screaming about God at the top of their lungs in the bazaar. And that's because the dervish's focus was on Allah. So everything he heard within the context of Allah's qualities. Everything he heard within the context of God's qualities. Everything he heard related to that relationship with God. So can we walk through the day that everything that we encounter relates to our relationship with God? Can we walk through the day that all of the things that we do are somehow interrelated with God? Yes, we can. But to do that, we have to set the intention to do that, and then we have to become conscious throughout the course of the day of what is going on around us. The Sufis and others call men sleepwalkers. They say that they're not conscious during the day. They're asleep in the same way that they're asleep when they go to bed. The reason they're asleep is because they have taken on the consciousness of illusion as opposed to the consciousness of Allah. They are walking around with illusory consciousness in the torpor of this illusory world. Leaving that and turning our consciousness towards Allah's qualities and walking with those qualities and keeping those qualities in mind, in heart, in body, in being, and in action protects us from the interaction with illusion and the effects of the interaction with illusion. Patience protects us from negativity. Gratitude protects us from greed. Think about it. Each one of Allah's qualities protects us from the alternative quality that is the quality of illusion, protects us from being overwhelmed and overtaken by the world, protects us so that we maintain ourselves as true believers with certitude, faith, and determination, protects us from doubt. There is doubt all around us. If you want to go into the area of doubt, just walk into the street. Just go to any library. Just watch any movie. There are reasons that people limit their interaction with social media because it creates doubt. It gives power to men. When this country was formed, if you read the speeches of the early founders of America, God is a constantly repeated phrase within their talks. Thanks to God is a constantly repeated phrase within what they say. Well, in our life, God has to be a constantly repeated phrase. And thanks to God has to be a constantly repeated phrase in our attitude towards the world. We have to thank him constantly for our breath. We have to thank him constantly for our food. We have to thank him constantly for our consciousness. And we have to thank him constantly for allowing us to be in the state of belief and to be in the state of cognizance of the fact that he exists and he is everywhere around us. Allah, bring this to the forefront of our consciousness. Bring this understanding with us so that when we walk, it is always with us. When we talk, it is always with us. In all of our interactions with humanity, allow Allah to come through our being and to resonate within us. Allow that resonance that surrounds us of the truth to resonate within us, and let us never lose our attachment to that resonance, which is God's resonance. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.